The fight continues.
Burnt down.
Homes destroyed, tens of thousands of evacuees on the move.
It's one thing when you watch it, it's another thing when you experience it.
As BC communities rally to welcome them.
Really wanted an opportunity to be able to help out in this terrible disaster.
Good evening. Wildfires continue to burn across BC tonight as more evacuees flee their homes, seeking safety away from the flames. We have team coverage of the developing wildfire situation tonight. Our reporters are stationed across the province. But to give you a sense of just how wide an area is impacted, take a look at this map. It's of the Cariboo region. The red are evacuation orders. The yellow, evacuation alerts. It covers more than 23,000 square kilometers in that region alone. Farah Morali has been following the latest developments, and she joins me now from Kamloops. Farah, what did we learn tonight?
Well, Brent, I'm here at the Sandman Center. This is where the emergency operations have been set up in Kamloops. It's late in the evening, but as you might be able to see behind me, people are still filing in and out. About 3/4 of the evacuees from Williams Lake have come here to Kamloops. And just within the past few hours, we've got some news about some of the fires that are burning in the Cariboo region. What we now know is this: about 40,000 people are under an evacuation order, meaning they're being forced from their homes. More than 17,000 others are under an evacuation alert, meaning they have to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. What we did learn tonight, though, are two pieces of good news, really. The first is that this fire that was burning northwest of Williams Lake, this was the White Lake fire, that actually has not crossed into the city limits. So according to the mayor, there are about 120 firefighters set up there monitoring that situation, but that fire has not destroyed or damaged any structures within the city limits. The same, though, can't be said for some of the surrounding communities. We know that at least 8 structures have been destroyed elsewhere. The other piece of good news is that the weather is cooperating for now. We knew that winds were in the forecast for today, but just this evening we've learned that the winds have actually started to blow back upon the fire, which is good news. So 2 pieces of good news after what's been a very long, chaotic 24 hours for so many people here. Of course, though, a lot of uncertainty. That White Lake fire is still burning at about 3,800 hectares. It's not close to being contained, and as long as it's burning that close to the city limits of Williams Lake and other communities, these tens of thousands of people are not going to be able to return home. Brenna.
The CBC's Farah Morali reporting for us tonight. Thank you, Farah. To Lake Country now, where a sudden fire sparked up just outside of Kelowna yesterday afternoon. It displaced hundreds of people. With no alert in place, officials had to do a sudden tactical evacuation as the flames whipped across the slope, destroying homes. Tanya Fletcher has more.
The flames started suddenly and moved quickly, consuming the swath of mountainside about 20 minutes north of Kelowna.
The grass all around through the trees was just catching. You could see while we were in there working and spraying down, it was sort of just consuming all around us. So it was pretty crazy, yeah. It moved really fast.
Dave Bergen and his family were at a neighborhood barbecue nearby when the fire broke out. His friend is a firefighter, so a few of them ran over, grabbed some garden hoses, and started dousing the flames.
Once we got there, it was already basically burnt down, and then it was moving up to the garage, but then it started catching the house next to it. Their hot tub was on fire. The stairs going up to the house was on fire, so we put that out and then moved back to just trying to keep that one house contained.
It's believed the fire started down here on the lake shore and then traveled very quickly up the mountainside. You can see this roadblock is still here. They say that's because the investigation is happening just around the bend where the flames actually started. You can still see crews. They've just taken their hoses and they're going way up onto the mountainside. That's because they say the flames are still active and they're still trying to establish a perimeter around the fire.
It was extremely fast. It was probably within half an hour of being reported, the fire had traveled probably, I'm estimating, about 1 kilometer inland. I think we, through a lot of resources, BC Wildfire did with all their aircraft. They had a lot of heavy air tankers, skimmer planes.
Lake Country's fire chief says this was a human-caused fire with some 300 homes affected by the evacuation. Up to a dozen destroyed, many more damaged.
It was a lost cause. We were lucky we didn't lose more homes in that neighborhood. And the really lucky part was that we had no injuries. Everybody evacuated very quickly when the RCMP, wildfire, and fire department went door to door and told people to get out now. Don't even grab anything, just leave.
As that was happening, workers at this evacuation center were preparing to take in hundreds of evacuees from Williams Lake. They quickly readjusted and set up registration for the Lake Country evacuees instead. Stuart Dejan is one of them.
It's one thing when you watch it, it's another thing when you experience it. Actually, you know, my wife's still alive, I'm still alive.
Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Kelowna.
Now we got a peek at the damage that a fast-moving fire, even a short-lasting one, can do. This is along Nighthawk Road that's overlooking Okanagan Lake, and you can see some homes are still smoldering, others are untouched. The aggressive fire broke out yesterday. Crews arrived quickly, but the fire moved so fast they could only work to protect the homes they thought they could save. A total of 8 houses along the street were destroyed by the fire. In Kamloops, the already long lineup at the evacuation center grew even further today. A series of evacuation orders and alerts have prompted entire communities to uproot. Those include Williams Lake, Clinton, and Loon Lake. As Jesse Johnston reports, most of them are heading to the same place.
Gray smoke, orange flames, and white knuckles. The road to safety from Clinton to Cache Creek has been anything but safe. The people you see here at the evacuation center in Kamloops have come from Clinton and Little Fort and all over the region, really. The majority, though, are from Williams Lake, which was placed on evacuation order late yesterday. That's where 82-year-old Ted Bureau lives.
That's why I had to leave, because it's hardly can breathe over there, or choke to death maybe.
Bureau says on a regular day it would take him about 4 hours to get to Kamloops, but yesterday was anything but regular. Stuck behind thousands of evacuees fleeing the city, he spent 11 hours on a bus. As of noon today, he still hadn't been to sleep.
You won't believe it. As far as you can see, nothing but vehicle.
Maximus Alphonse had a long night of traveling too. He's tired, but he's safe, and he's with his hamster, so he's carefree. It's his grandfather that has plenty to worry about.
Back home, they got this fire on the res. It burned one house and burned the garage, and it's still threatening. I hope the Creator helps us, all this devastation.
Alphonse doubts his home, the one he just finished paying off, will still be there when he goes back. The flames were already too close for comfort when he left. But as he puts it, that's up to the Creator. All he can do for now is walk away. Jesse Johnston, CBC News, Kamloops.
Many of those evacuees have harrowing tales of how they got out of harm's way. As Tina Lovegreen tells us, they face many restless nights ahead.
It's been an uneasy journey for the thousands fleeing the flames, especially for 62-year-old Gary Bennett.
I can't stand for very long.
He says he had to hitchhike from Williams Lake.
What do you do, right? You don't have a vehicle or anything like that, right? You're going to have to get out somehow. So I walk.
Bennett lives a life of solitude, and one of the drawbacks is that he doesn't have a car or anyone to give him a ride.
Everybody was screaming by me, and no one would pick me up. And then finally I got a ride with this trucker guy stops, and he says, this shouldn't be a place for you to be.
He got to Kamloops yesterday. He says an RCMP officer gave him his new kicks after he wore out his pair walking the highway. He then camped out in the park.
Here's my tent. And that's what I've been using to sleep in.
Cots are available through the Emergency Services Center, but they're not suitable for everyone.
Obviously, there isn't a whole lot of room in here.
This young couple might have to once again sleep in their car.
Really, we just sort of parked somewhere a little bit quiet and just like this. I put a blanket or a pillow on the window. I sort of covered myself with my jacket and fell asleep. Not like it would have mattered where I was so exhausted, right?
The pair left Williams Lake with 9 animals.
So we have these guys here.
2 dogs and 7 cats, one which they found stuck in a camper.
It's been a
trip and a half.
It's been a rough week.
Because of the number of animals they have, they might have to once again sleep in their crammed car.
We have animals, so that's kind of priority for us. We go where they go.
Hotel rooms are also filling up quickly, and people are being told to stay with family and friends if possible.
I am staying with my daughter in Westside with 5 of my dogs.
Some will have a comfortable bed tonight, but that doesn't mean they'll be resting easy.
Everything's there, except for photos. We got all our photographs out, my computer out. Yeah, we've lived there for 42 years, so basically everything's still in the house. You know, we got what we could.
A restless night, no matter which way you lay. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Kamloops.
Thousands of people are staying the night in Prince George, waiting for a chance to return home. Many of them still don't know if they'll even have a house to go back to, and it's that stress of not knowing that's weighing heavily. But as the CBC's Cameron McIntosh reports, locals are trying their best to make evacuees comfortable.
Riffing on the blues is helping Rick Matthews deal with the stress.
I'm talking about adjusting to the situation, and that's the first priority.
He and his family have been camped out on the parking lot of the Prince George Evacuee Registration Center for a week.
We have to wrap our heads around the fact that it could be till the end of fire season.
Prior to the evacuation order, more than 7,000 people from the Williams Lake area had already come here to Prince George to register as evacuees. And now more people are coming. Thoughts are shifting to the long term. This university dorm building has just been converted into a personal care home.
We figured it out now that we were able to set this up and have it running fairly smoothly within a matter of a week.
Meanwhile, Prince George has recruited a volunteer army of hundreds. Disasters like the Fort McMurray fire led City Council here to plan for a situation like this.
You're ready to go, but you're tweaking it just to make it better because things come up that you don't even think of.
All of it's pretty overwhelming for families just arriving.
We're just kind of at a loss as to where to go, and kids are scared and the pets are scared.
Or those like Rainer Fadish, who says there's a good chance his house is gone.
Picked up my kids and my dogs and we left, right? The left side from our property was all on fire already.
Just the sort of uncertainty Rick Matthews has had a whole week to chew on.
The big question you asked just then is what is going to happen now?
You don't know?
I have no idea.
Other than get used to a long and worrisome wait. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Prince George.
Some of those escaping the fires have been making their way west to the Lower Mainland. The Chilliwack High School is welcoming them, and that's where our John Hernandez was today.
It was difficult to see.
The fast-moving flames still wear on the minds of evacuees. Manola Kanubiseth has now been forced out of 2 towns. A week ago, she left her home in a 150-mile house. She hoped she'd be safe in Williams Lake, but last night, the entire city was evacuated.
The whole town was blanketed with smoke and ash. And as we were leaving, all I could think to myself was that we are in hell because it was so hot.
Roads were packed as over 20,000 people were ordered to leave the area. The drive to this makeshift relief center at Chilliwack Senior Secondary took over 16 hours instead of the usual 5. Ivan Jonov spent the ride beside his 3 cats.
This is probably their first drive in a vehicle, and they were all over me, just crawling. There was no cages, there was no harnesses.
Jonov is one of dozens of evacuees who have registered at the Chilliwack Center. Here, volunteers are working around the clock to provide support.
The people of Chilliwack really wanted an opportunity to be able to help out in this terrible disaster as people are fleeing the fires.
Emergency Management BC says the school has space for over 100 people, but are urging evacuees to find other places to sleep if possible.
The school is quite well equipped for
longer term.
As the flames across the province intensify, these evacuees wonder if and when they'll ever return home.
I don't know whether the town is going to be there still.
But for some, knowing friends and family are safe and sound is comfort enough.
Even if the house burns down, it's just a house. There is insurance, they'll build a new house.
John Hernandez, CBC News, Chilliwack.
Coming up, sharing a common bond, how young burn survivors are getting a chance to forget their injuries and enjoy being kids.